is very, very important for the functioning of the ecosystem. That is why it is the topmost goal of a conservation biologist. He or she has to identify and then protect the keystone species. If the keystone species gets extinct, then it will put pressure on all the other species of the ecosystem. So the food chain will be disrupted, then the previous species on which it consumes will increase in number, and then eventually there will be pressure on other species too, and they can collapse. So do you understand that if the keystone species is not there in the environment, in the ecosystem, then a group of population of species is increasing, and due to that increase in that species, the other species are declining. I hope you got this point. So that is the
Yes, ma'am.
through that you can
Yes, ma'am.
understand the significance of keystone species. So there is abnormal increase in the population of one species, while there is an abnormal decrease in the population of the other species, which are dependent on those. Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
So ultimately, this will again impact the biodiversity. So that's why it becomes all the more important to identify the keystone species and protect it. So we can see we have a top predator, the tiger. It is the best example of a keystone species. So that is why efforts are being made to protect the declining tiger population. Okay, so disappearance of keystone species create a domino effect in the ecosystem, a ripple effect in the ecosystem. The entire ecosystem goes towards disbalance. That is why protecting a keystone species is really very important. Now coming to another type of species. So second example is of the flagship species. What do you understand by flagship?
High end significant.
which are highly significant.
Yeah. So
second topmost.
it is like the commander's flag, the person or the person who carries the commander's flag. So you can say the finest species. So it is a high profile species. So most important one of a group of things. So a high profile species which is used to promote biodiversity conservation. So if we see the word flagship, that then it determines a very popular species. So it is a kind of a high profile species which is utilized for the purpose of awareness. So if you want to promote biodiversity conservation, then you have to make people aware of it, and these are mostly serving the purpose of awareness. So it is like a face of species which are on the posters and programs of conservation, biodiversity conservation. So these are ecologically, culturally, and emotionally significant in the society. So what do you understand by emotional significance? How many of you like panda?
Almost everyone.
Almost everyone, right? So if it gets extinct, then everyone would be worried because that animal has some emotional attachment with, we have some emotional attachment with that animal because it appears very cute, right? So then if it is getting extinct, or if its population is declining, and we take it up on we take it up it to the, what to say, cover page of the conservation programs and everything, then people will understand more, because that species is very popular. And if it will get extinct, then again there will be a threat to the ecosystem. So these are those species with which people can connect more. So we also have tiger. Tiger is the national animal of India and we all know about it. So if we project that the tiger species is declining, then ultimately it will create some or the other sense of awareness in people's mind. So these denote the flagship species. So these are the popular or the high profile species which are used to promote biodiversity conservation. So this can be for a small region या कोई local region में हो सकता है जहाँ पे वो species बहुत popular हो, or it can be of a much larger area. So tiger is an example of a flagship species of a nation because it is the national animal of our country. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is again done to increase effectiveness of conservation strategies. So when people will connect more, then obviously they will become aware more. If we see the conservation strategies, then there is always a gap in communication. We all know that conservation strategies exist, but that has to be conveyed to people more effectively. And uh, for that effective transformation of the information, we use flagship species as many people know about it. अब टाइगर है, टाइगर का सबको पता है कि हाँ हमारी कंट्री का नेशनल एनिमल है. And if there are threats to the population of tiger, then we all understand that something is going wrong. The balance of the ecosystem has to be tightened up, and then the conservation will be more effective. So these are the examples of flagship species. Next we
Ma'am,
have, yes,
ma'am, recently 4 cheetahs have been brought from South Africa to a national park of Madhya Pradesh.
yes, cheetahs were extinct. So these are efforts to again revive that species. So when we will
Yes.
study about species translocation and species reintroduction, then we will further discuss this example. We will discuss, and maybe towards the end of this class, relocation and translocation and reintroduction of species. Now, what are the indicator species? So these species indicate something. And what would be that indication? It would be about the change in the climatic conditions. Supposedly there is pollution in an area, then the indicator species will totally identify that pollution and it may stop growing. It will affect the indicator species and then only we will get to know that there is something wrong in the climatic conditions of the ecosystem, the environmental conditions of the ecosystem. So these species, they respond quickly to any change in the ecosystem. So be it temperature or be it air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution. So when they are very sensitive to these changes, then obviously they are telling us about the overall health of the ecosystem. So we have examples of lichens and frogs here. What do you understand by lichens? Lichens का पता है सबको? What are lichens?
Yes, ma'am.
What?
Yes, ma'am.
Symbiotic association between algae and fungi.
Yes. So these species are found in colder temperatures, hilly regions, and where obviously the climate is or the environment is free from pollution. So the moment pollution increases, lichens disappear. And then all the amphibians, so these are also indicator species. Why? Because they have very, very thin skin. So if there is any kind of pollution, then the chemicals can diffuse into their bodies and kill them. So this is the basic logic behind indicator species getting this is the main logic behind the disappearance of indicator species due to any change in the ecosystem. And similarly, worms are indicating soil pollution. So if the soil is polluted, then the number of then the number of earthworms in the soil will decrease. Yeah. And then the next one is the umbrella species. So umbrella species are those when we protect them, then other species of the ecosystem are also protected. So these are the species which have large habitat needs and other requirements. And then if we want to conserve these species, then we have to conserve the entire ecosystem. And when we have to and when we are conserving the entire ecosystem, then ultimately the protection is extended to all the other species. So we have example of Asiatic lion, Bengal tiger, one-horn rhino. So if we want to protect these species, then obviously we have to protect the ecosystem, and in a way we are also extending protection to other species. So see here, the tiger is the umbrella species of the ecosystem. So when we have to protect tiger, we have to protect the entire ecosystem, and then we can protect these other species also. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now coming to species reintroduction and translocation. So these are the two strategies adopted by IUCN to restore the biodiversity. Where there is the places where there is biodiversity loss or any other problem, then we can use these two techniques. Coming to the reintroduction of species, as the name suggests, it is actually introducing a species in an area which was once a part of its historical range, which was once its habitat, and now that species has become extinct from that place. तो अभी चीता वाला जो एग्जाम्पल दिया था, किसने दिया था? रिपीट वंस.
Yes, ma'am. Recently, five cheetahs, ma'am, 3 females and 2 males have been brought back to India from South Africa.
Yes.
In Madhya Pradesh.
Yeah. So it is मध्य प्रदेश में वो extinct हो गए थे. So it is again.
Ma'am, entire India में, ma'am. Last cheetah में 1969.
Exactly. Entire India में extinct हो गए थे, लेकिन मध्य प्रदेश was its biogeographic zone. So when we were studying that zone, you remember I told cheetah is found in this zone, but now it is extinct. So the efforts of bringing back cheetah is an example of species reintroduction. Why do you think species reintroduction is necessary?
Meant to conserve the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And the biodiversity also.
Yes. Because ecosystem में हर एक species important होता है. So that is why these efforts are being made from time to time. And to bring about such programs, it is always better that we have in-depth knowledge about the species or about the reintroduction program which we are carrying out. So अगर ये सब हमें ठीक से पता होगा, data and all we know about it, then these programs will become much more easier and it will be fruitful. तो ऐसे ही नहीं कि दो species उठा लिया और किसी area में डाल दिया. It is never like that. So there is strategic planning behind all these steps which are taken up to conserve the biodiversity. So even when we have reintroduced the species, we will obviously check all these species, like how they are surviving, what are the problems, are they surviving or not, what are the glitches with the program. So that has to be monitored over time. So that is why it appears to be very simple, but it has many things associated with it. So we need to have a proper knowledge of the ecosystem and also the species which we are bringing back. And most importantly, species should be reintroduced into its ओन हैबिटेट. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप अगर आप चीता को रीइंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो तो आप उसको आर्कटिक जोन या एंटार्क्टिक जोन में डाल दो. इट विल नॉट सर्वाइव. ऑल दीज थिंग्स यू हैव टू keep in mind that it should be its habitat. That is the most important thing here. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So not only animals, but you can also reintroduce some of the plants in the ecosystem. And so likewise, it can be with any of the life forms. So what are the objectives of reintroduction? First of all, to enhance the long-term survival of a species. If the number of an important species is declining and we are able to identify it, then we can increase its survival by reintroducing some of the numbers of that species. So it will increase the long-term survival. Then we can also re-establish a keystone species in an ecosystem. If the keystone species is under threat, then we know that ecosystem will not be viable for more time. Then we can always identify the keystone species and we can reintroduce it. And third point is obviously to maintain and restore the natural biodiversity. For that only, we are again reintroducing the species which has collapsed, and it may also provide long-term economic benefits to the local or national economy. So there are also economic benefits. If some medicinal plants are reintroduced into their habitats, then it will increase the number of their population, and we can always use these plants to obtain the biochemicals or medicine. So it may also have economic benefits. And then the last purpose which it serves is to promote awareness about conservation strategies. So we all know when it is in news that cheetah was extinct and we have done something to conserve it, to bring it back. So it creates a level of awareness, and we know that the situation of the environment is not so good in this time, and some of the species are also being extinct. One example was of cheetah. Then the second example is reintroduction of tiger, and that was from Ranthambore to Sariska Tiger Reserve. This was within the country only because they did not become extinct. But cheetah case में they got extinct, so that is why we are reintroducing them from another country. Now coming to another conservation strategy adopted by IUCN, it is known as species translocation. So translocation is movement. You are moving the species, and this effect is, or this effort is deliberate. So we check for the ecosystems, we check for the number of species. If a species is declining, then we can translocate some of that species from the other ecosystem. Or if the number of one of the species has risen tremendously, then also it is a threat to the ecosystem. So we can always take the extra species and we can migrate it, or we can move it to other ecosystem. So that is why it is called a deliberate movement of wild species or populations from one part of their range to another. So habitat is again very important here. उनके टेम्परेचर कंडीशंस, एटमॉस्फेरिक कंडीशन सिमिलर रहने चाहिए, तभी वो सरवाइव करेंगे. So translocation species is why we are carrying out this program, translocation species, to maintain population balance in the ecosystem. This is the most important terminology here. अगर आपको एग्जाम में translocation of species पूछा जाता है, then this is very important to write, to maintain population balance in the ecosystem. Because once we are mentioning population balance, तो उसमें इंक्रीज और डिक्रीज दोनों आ जाएगा. ठीक है. सो यू हैव टू मेंशन टू मेंटेन पॉपुलेशन बैलेंस, द ट्रांसलोकेशन ऑफ स्पीशीज इज ब्रॉट अबाउट, एंड दिस इज ऑल्सो बेनिफिशियल टू रिड्यूस ह्यूमन एनिमल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स. तो कई जगह पे एलिफेंट्स एंड ह्यूमंस का बहुत ज़्यादा कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होता है. So we can always plan it and strategically move elephants to a much safer area. Then it is also done to increase or reduce population, or it is done for commercial purposes or for recreational purposes. So the ultimate goal is to maintain the population balance in the ecosystem. And due to the translocation of species, there is obviously an improvement in the biodiversity of that region. Because अगर हम population balance maintain कर रहे हैं, तो ecosystem का balance अपने आप ही maintain हो जाएगा. It will be in a great state of equilibrium. So there will be homeostasis. Coming to the example, so a few rhinos were translocated from Kaziranga National Park to Manas National Park to increase populations of rhinoceros in Manas National Park. So this is again an example of species. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Moving on further, we will discuss some of the case studies. तो इसमें मैंने third and fourth unit दोनों के case studies को merge कर दिया है, and we will discuss it one by one. क्योंकि अभी हम biodiversity हमने पढ़ा है, we have seen what is biodiversity, why it is important, and what are the conservation strategies, what are the threats. So we will first begin with the conservation strategies of, or the case studies of this unit only. And the first one is the Project Tiger here. It is very important, and this scheme is still ongoing. तो जो भी conservation strategy हम पढ़ रहे हैं, वो majorly वो अभी चल ही रहे हैं. मतलब it has started long back, like Project Tiger. It began in the year 1973, and it is still continuing. And the efforts made were very good, and we can see a successful improvement. So when we started it in the year 1972, then the tiger population in India was only 1827. But now we have around 3,000 tigers in 2019. So we can see a clear-cut response of these efforts, and it has proved to be very, very fruitful. So Project Tiger, it started in the year 1973 when the tiger population was declining, and this was taken care of by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and obviously its focus was to increase the dwindling number of tigers in India. And we all know why tigers are important. These are the keystone species also, and these are the umbrella species, and also the national animal of our country. So it was identified, and it is still a very, very important species of our country. So it became necessary to increase its number, and that's why this program was launched. And how was this project brought about? What were the conservation strategies? So these were grouped under in situ conservation. So we followed in situ conservation method. तो हमने पूरा का पूरा इकोसिस्टम ही कंजर्व किया, जहाँ पे टाइगर्स थे, मेजरली उनको उनके नेचुरल हैबिटेट में ही हमने कंजर्व किया. So this was the main strategy of conserving, and that is why we have also increased the number of tiger reserves in India. क्योंकि natural habitat में conserve करना था, तो इसीलिए tiger reserves का number भी बढ़ गया इंडिया में. And if we see the present data, then 50 tiger reserves have been established in India, and Kanha Tiger Reserve is an example. And due to these efforts, now the tiger population is doubled. मतलब 1800 से around 3000 हो गया है. But it does not mean that we will stop here. That is why the scheme is still undergoing, because tigers are affected due to hunting and poaching activities. So again, we require stringent laws to check these practices, and that is why we are still uh, running the Project Tiger. The project is still undergoing. Next, like the Project Tiger, we also have Project Elephant. And elephants are also important because their habitat requirements are very large. So if the elephants are protected, मतलब वो पूरा का पूरा area protect होगा. Again, it is important for the ecosystem. So, and it is also one of the keystone species. So if we are protecting the elephants, then we are protecting the ecosystem. And also, if we see illegal trade, then the tusks of elephants are uh, sold as ivory and smuggled. So it is again putting a pressure on these species. So that's why the number of elephants are decreasing. एक तो ivory हो गया, दूसरा there is a lot of conflict, human and elephant conflict. So this is again decreasing the animal population in the ecosystem, the elephant population in the ecosystem. Poaching activities, then conflicts, and क्योंकि इनका habitat requirement बहुत ज़्यादा है, मतलब since they are large animal, so they require large area for movement. So sometimes it happens that while we are developing something, you can say a transportation strategy, or supposedly we make railway tracks in the habitats of elephants, then that is also a threat to their population, because elephants can move on the tracks, and they can collide with the fast moving trains, which results in their death. So these are some of the serious issues which is declining the elephant population in our country, and we have identified these issues, and that is why we have started a project to conserve this. So this is recent. Project Elephant is recent if we compare it with the Project Tiger. It began in the year 1992. And again, it is under the aegis of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And the main focus is to increase the elephant populations in India. And here also we employed a similar conservation strategy, that was in situ conservation. So in situ conservation से ही हमने, again, we are focusing on increasing the elephant population in India, and due to the efforts of this project, we have established around 32 elephant reserves in India. And we have also implemented monitoring of illegal killing of elephants in this project. So although efforts हैं अभी भी ongoing है, but the threats have not reduced. So obviously,
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, can you explain in situ conservation strategy?
Okay, I have already taught you about in situ conservation. I want any one of you to explain that now. Who will tell what is in situ conservation?
हम उनको नेचुरल हैबिटेट में ही उनको कंजर्व करते हैं.
Yes. We are conserving the species in their natural habitats. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So do you also want examples of it? What are the examples of in situ conservation?
National
From
park,
national parks.
sanctuaries,
Yes. National parks, wildlife sanctuaries,
biosphere reserves.
biosphere reserves. So these are the examples of in situ conservation. So national parks में क्या होता है? We are just conserving the entire ecosystem. If we want to conserve that animal or conserve the entire biodiversity. And
मैम ऐसा
in
नेम किस बेस पे दिया गया है?
what?
मैम जो हमने इंस्टीट्यूट नेम दिया है इसे किस बेस पे दिया है?
In situ is
In the site,
protecting in the natural habitat. In that state, in that natural state.
मैम इंग्लिश का वर्ड है क्या ये?
No, it is not.
In that situation.
It is not English. It is Latin. On-site conservation.
ओके मैम.
Okay. So we have studied about Project Tiger and Project Elephant. Moving on to another, it is another one is the Project Crocodile. So अभी तक land animals का पढ़ रहे थे. So crocodile is an important aquatic animal, and obviously it is the top predator of aquatic ecosystem. So if we are protecting crocodile, then again we are protecting the population of other small animals in the aquatic systems. So in India, crocodiles are on the verge of extinction. So we have a lot of threats to the biodiversity of crocodiles or the diversity of crocodiles. So in India, we have majorly three species of crocodile. So we have gharial. So this is a freshwater crocodile, and now it is critically endangered. And what is the reason for it being endangered? Water body pollute हो गई. Since it is a freshwater crocodile, then if the water quality gets degraded, then it will become extinct. So right now it is critically endangered, but if we will not implement some of the conservation strategies, then it will become extinct. And this is all due to environmental changes, environmental pollution. So pollution of the river bodies. Then second species is mugger. So this is again a freshwater crocodile, and this is vulnerable. जो घड़ियाल है, that is critically endangered, but mugger is vulnerable. And what led to this decline in population of mugger? So it was due to construction of dams. This has resulted in decline in this species. The next one is the saltwater crocodile, and these are common in the coastals of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. These are also in the islands, but now it is getting extinct in these states. So it is all depending upon the water pollution which is being carried out. So we dispose of plastics in the water bodies. So, and also a lot of waste are being disposed in the water bodies. Sewage hai, industrial effluents hai. So, and some of human waste are also disposed of. So this is again, it is making the water quality very, very bad. And so the species cannot survive in those conditions. So that is why it is affecting the aquatic organism. So that is why the populations of crocodile are decreasing. And when we have identified it, so we have employed the conservation strategy in the form of Project Crocodile. And not only this, the destruction of mangrove vegetations for the development of coastal regions has also resulted in the decline of these species. तो एक तो environmental pollution है, दूसरा उनका natural habitat हम डिस्ट्रक्ट कर रहे हैं. तो जैसे हमने मैंग्रोव्स को डिस्ट्रप्ट किया, तो इसकी वजह से भी they are becoming, the population is decreasing. So how it all began? So it was seen in 1974 when this survey was brought about. This survey was known as Crocodile Survey, and we saw a decline in their number. Then immediately in the next year, which is 1975, this project was launched to increase the population of crocodile, and this was launched by the government of India along with support from UNDP and Food and Agriculture Organization. So United Nations Development Program and FAO along with Government of India launched this Project Crocodile. So again we are using in situ conservation strategy here. तो अभी तक जितने भी हमने conservation strategies पढ़े हैं, चाहे वो Project Tiger हो या Project Elephant हो या फिर ये अभी crocodile हो, we are using in situ conservation strategies. Why we are using in situ conservation strategies? What is that important thing which is connecting these three projects? तीनों में हमने in situ use. What?
Yes,
For
ma'am.
natural
Dead. No,
नेचुरल
otherwise,
हैबिटेट तो है, लेकिन जो ये एनिमल्स हैं ये टॉप प्रीडेटर्स हैं, मतलब कीस्टोन स्पीशीज हैं, इसीलिए इनको इनके नेचुरल हैबिटेट में कंजर्व कर रहे हैं. तो एक तो ये एनिमल भी कंजर्व होंगे और दूसरे एनिमल्स भी साथ में, पूरा इकोसिस्टम साथ में कंजर्व हो जाएगा. So that is why in situ conservation strategy is preferred in these three projects. And due to the efforts of this project, again we have seen the build-up of many crocodile sanctuaries. So we have one example here, National Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary. It is in Madhya Pradesh and it has been established for the conservation of crocodile species. Not only this, 16 crocodile rehabilitation centers have been established in India for breeding and rearing of crocodiles. So we can breed them and then we can always reintroduce them into the sanctuaries. So these are the efforts to increase the number of crocodiles in India. Another one is Project Vulture. So I hope you all know vulture is a scavenging bird. And I hope you know what are scavengers.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Who will explain?
Ma'am, they feed upon the
Dead and decayed
leftovers of the.
organism.
Yes. So they feed on dead and decaying organisms and they are cleansing the ecosystem. So vulture is one such species and now it has become critically endangered. उसका population में बहुत rapid decline हुआ है. And why did it decline? It declined due to biomagnification. What do you understand by this term biomagnification? Have you read it before? Biomagnification?
Yes, ma'am.
yes,
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Sharon, can you explain what is biomagnification?
Biomagnification basically means that any component is just expanding or magnifying or increasing in number from the one trophic level to another successive trophic level. Like for example, in plants, like DDT example also. In plants, the DDT is present, and when they are consumed by the herbivores or the consumers, then the amount of DDT increases. So this is an example, like and so on. So this is an example of biomagnification.
Yes. So he's absolutely right. So when a chemical keeps on increasing, keeps on building up at the higher trophic levels, then this process is known as biomagnification. it is just opposite to the energy. Energy तो trophic levels में कम होती है, but ये chemicals increase होते हैं. Why does this happen?
Ma'am, because the chemicals are not digestible by the physiology of the animals.
Okay, that can be taken as one reason. But the other reason is that we repeatedly consume those plants or animals. So this keeps on accumulating in the body.
Yes.
Okay. And now coming to
मैम मेन रीजन तो इसका डाइजेशन ही मानेंगे ना
दोनों लिखने हैं.
क्योंकि अगर डाइजेशन होता रहा तो मतलब इंक्रीजिंग की जगह डिक्रीजिंग भी हो सकता है.
But you have to also write the repetitive consumption also. So that is also very important.
Okay, ma'am.
Because if you are not consuming it, then how the number will increase? Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So we have one such chemical, which is diclofenac. It is commonly taken up as a painkiller, and this was injected in cattle, if so as to make them work for longer durations in the farms. So these cattle were given painkiller injections, and once it came into the food chain, then obviously when the vultures will feed upon these decaying cattle, they will obviously be exposed to this chemical. And this diclofenac was found in increased concentration in the Indian vulture, which was which was affecting the vulture population, and their number were declining. Due to an increased concentration of diclofenac in the Indian vulture, it led to their immediate death, and their numbers were decreased. So after identifying this, the government came into action, and in the year 2006, the Project Vulture was launched. So what were the objectives of this program? First of all, क्योंकि biomagnification identify किया था, वो chemical identify किया था, so this was completely banned. अभी diclofenac injections and all nahi dete, and also it is please mute your mic, whosoever has it is creating a disturbance in the class. Okay, so first of all, diclofenac was completely banned for veterinary use. It was not being it is now not being given to animals since the year 2006. Then again, we employed an in situ strategy of vulture conservation here, and we have made some vulture safe zones, and we are strictly prohibiting diclofenac in that region so that we can increase the number of the vultures in that area. And apart from that, we have also taken up the ex situ conservation strategies, and for that we have built up vulture conservation breeding centers in Guwahati, Haryana, West Bengal, and Madhya Pradesh. So we are constantly breeding vultures in these states so as to increase their population. So I think we will stop here, and then we will begin the Silent Valley movement in the next class. So we will join for the next class at 3 p.m. and I will give you the test. Okay? Only 1 hour time will be given to you, and you will turn in, and that will
Ma'am,
be
your voice
counted.
is breaking.
I'm just saying, in the next class, I will give you the test.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So there
Okay,
will
ma'am.